Even if you threw in a bunch of werewolves, the Brontë family history would still make complete sense. So I am coming to you in the wake of Storm Ciarán. We've had quite an intensive past week. So Storm Ciarán hit us on the 1st of November in the night, and like the night, the 1st through to the 2nd. And it's been the most violent storm that we've ever known, and I live on the peninsula in Normandy, so I have the North Sea on both sides. We know about storms, specifically in the winter when the wind blows really hard. But this time round, we broke a bunch of different records when it comes to the storm. Like 170 km/h winds is the most that we got, which is just insane. Like that is way more than anything I've ever known before. Like the strongest winds I've ever known was 130 km/h, which is pretty bad. And in Brittany they got winds up to 200 km/h, which is just insane. So yeah, pretty bad storm. There was quite a bit of damage, and so we were lucky in the sense that my property, like where we live, we didn't get any damage. We were like checking everything before the storm hit. I went to check on my horses. We were like making sure everything was tied down, or that it didn't risk flying away, that all the house was safe, and that all the trees were like weren't looking too peaky. Like we were quite lucky. So yeah, a lot of damage, a lot of trees mostly came down. One of my neighbor's chimneys came down, infrastructural damage, and complete and total blackout. We had no electricity for 3 days, and it was obviously like everything we had planned to eat for the next week was all like hot meals that we had to prepare on our electric cooker, so we couldn't do any of those. We went down to the supermarket, which thankfully the supermarket had power, and we could go and buy stuff. And they were like, oh, you're buying cold stuff, that means you're blacked out. Yes, we are. So yeah, that was interesting. And the side effect of this, if you've been following my community tabs, you'll know that I had to read this book by candlelight. So this is My Brother's Keeper by Tim Powers, and it's a Victorian Gothic horror novel. So reading it by candlelight felt rather appropriate. I had never read a Tim Powers novel before, to my great shame, because Tim Powers is one of the great movers of the steampunk genre. He also wrote On Stranger Tides, which is the book that inspired the 4th Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and I am nothing if not a gigantic Pirates fan. And I hadn't yet read a Gothic horror novel this year, so I thought I'd make up for this by reading this book. So this book tells the story of the Brontë family, Emily and Charlotte, their brother Branwell, and their father Patrick. Yes, we're talking about those Brontes, and how their family is cursed by an ancient pagan demon that has a particular penchant towards werewolves. Tim Powers really woke up one day and was like, even if you threw in a bunch of werewolves, the Brontë family history would still make complete sense. This book mainly focuses on Emily when she finds a strange man on the moor who is injured, and when she goes to try and find help for him, finds that he is gone, even though his wounds seemed very deadly, at least to her. Strange happenings on the moor, specifically this strange, dark, mysterious child wearing rags that appears in the graveyard that Branwell, Anne, and Emily can see, but not Charlotte. And a strange woman approaches Branwell with a rather disturbing skull, claiming that she wants to somehow place it under a giant stone in the church. It later transpires that the family is cursed with this child that they keep seeing who is actually an ancient pagan demon who was saved by Patrick's grandfather, and to thank him for this, the demon decided to curse his entire family. Just, you know, regular demon stuff. And it turns out that Branwell and Emily were both bitten by a werewolf, but Branwell is the only one that actually starts transforming. Branwell is such a sop. Like, I know that, like, there have been several attempts in the past, I think, to like try and salvage Branwell Brontë, because he was kind of the runt of the litter. Like, he was very much outshined by his three sisters, who were all brilliant writers, and he never really did anything. He was drunk and like had a gambling addiction, and the sisters had to care for him. And yeah, he was basically a pretty problematic person. The one thing he did go down in history for was painting the one picture of the Brontë sisters, all three of them together. And originally he painted himself into the painting, but then went back on that decision and painted himself out. This is called repentir in painting. Yes, I used to be an art student, you're welcome. This book has a rather interesting explanation as to why he painted himself out of the painting, which I really like that. I really like how Tim Powers took like basically the Brontë family history and just makes it work with like a cursed child and werewolves and this like secret society in London and this strange dude that Emily found out on the moors. Also, can we just take a moment and appreciate this cover? Like, I very, very like this cover. So shiny! Shiny! Overall, really enjoyed this book. I really like the story. I really like the characters. I really like what Tim Powers did with them, especially like if you know a bit about the Brontë family history. Like I said at the beginning, just throw in some werewolves and it still completely makes sense. What I didn't like about it was that there are little to no emotions anywhere in this book. So, as I said, I've never read a Tim Powers book before, so I don't know his writing style. Maybe this is something that is pretty common for him, but like, I personally enjoy more personal and emotional exploration in characters. It just felt really odd having a scene where there's a bunch of werewolves running down a hill and little Emily Brontë is there with a revolver she's only used 3 times in her life, and she's supposed to like set fire to them, and she's just there being like, oh yeah, regular Tuesday. Like, are you not even like scared or nervous or frustrated? I don't know, like, this like goes for Branwell as well, who is just insanely frustrating because either he's drunk or he's threatening to commit suicide because he wants them to give him money to go down the pub or whatever, and all around just complaining and being soppy and moaning and making terrible decisions that others have to pay the consequences for, that his family have to pay the consequences for, and they're just like, okay, really? You're not like slightly annoyed with him, like, at all? Because I would be. So this is a 3.5 stars for me. I enjoyed it, but I did find that it was very lacking in a certain way. I did like how Tim Powers like makes a link between certain characters in this book and certain characters in, especially Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, which is actually my least favourite of all the Brontë novels. I haven't read Villette, but out of Jane Eyre and The Tenant of Wildfell Hall and Wuthering Heights is my least favourite of the 3. Like, one of the reasons is just the characters are so annoying and unlikable, but I did like how Tim Powers kind of drew a parallel between certain characters and like the characters in the Bronte's novels, like even from Jane Eyre, like Rochester at the end of the book, like anyway, so yeah, and a part of me was like, maybe Tim Powers was trying to write this like a Victorian classic, because there wasn't a lot of emotional exploration in Victorian classics. It's mostly like, here's a bunch of characters and here's what they do and here's what happens, and they are brilliant novels, like, don't get me wrong, I love a good classic, but like, Even saying that, one of the reasons I love Jane Eyre so much is it just takes you on an emotional journey. Like, you go through every human emotion when you read this book, which wasn't the case for this book. I like the characters, I like the story, but I didn't really get afraid or nervous or frustrated because Emily wasn't scared or frustrated. She was just going through the motions. The use of pagan myths, especially those from the north of England, which are very close to my heart because I was born in Yorkshire. So a lot of these legends and myths are very close to my heart, and it feels like werewolves are on theme right now because when I did the Insomnium video, there was a lot about werewolves as well. So maybe I need to go and look for more werewolves in my reading. So that was My Brother's Keeper by Tim Powers, my gothic horror novel for this year, and the perfect book to read if you are and the perfect book to read if you are experiencing complete power blackout due to a storm. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the metal album recommendation. And for today's metal album recommendation, we have Constellation of the Black Light by Wilfheart. So as I've said before, I really love Wilfheart. This is a melodic death metal band from Finland. Wolves are just a theme right now. This is my favourite Wilfheart album. It's also one of my favourite covers. Stop shining. But I really love that artwork that goes with this album as well. It's very dark. It's like going into a dark forest. I can't get it at an angle. Can't really see what that is, can you? Yeah, anyway. I really love this album. I really love the artwork. Melodic death metal from Finland. They were playing live in Paris on the 7th of November, but I wasn't able to go and see them. So I am promoting their album instead. So do go give that a spin. And as always, thank you so much for sharing this moment with me. Don't hesitate to tell me your thoughts in the comment section. Like, share, please subscribe to my channel. Read books and listen to metal, and I will see you all next time. Mwah!